Hey 3D Basics class, welcome to your week 14 lecture. This week we are going to cover a couple of random things, sort of seemingly random things, but just we're kind of cleaning up, rounding out a few different concepts for the semester as we slide into your final project. First thing, I want to look at curves and working with curves. Which is probably something that I should have introduced a little earlier in the semester, so I apologize a little bit. I feel like this kind of slipped from my itinerary. I also want to talk about general tips for optimizing your projects, optimizing your models and meshes, and kind of working efficiently. And then thirdly, I want to look at precision tools, precision editing, using your 3D cursor, using snapping and things like that. So a few different random things we'll cover today. But let us begin in Blender with a new general file. So let's talk about curves and splines. I'm going to just delete everything here. Deleting. And let me turn on my keyboard shortcut thing. Let's go. I realized that, so during the last lecture, I had my microphone on the desk instead of on the mic arm. And you could hear all the like clicks and typing and stuff, and I bumped it a few times. So we're back on the microphone arm. Hopefully this is a little better. Shift A with me, won't you? And let's add a curve. So we've got meshes and we have curves. A few different default options here, but let's look at Bezier. We have the Bezier curve object in our scene collection here. It's signaled by the little curvy thing. And we just have kind of a little swoopy line in our scene right now. Tab for edit mode. And we can see, and actually, why don't we do a top or down orthographic view by hitting 7 on the number pad. We have 2 points on the curve here, point 1, point 2. This, if you have used Photoshop at all and are familiar with the pen tool, or maybe you've used After Effects and you're familiar with the pen tool, working with a curve is like working with the pen tool somewhat. So we can take a point and E extrude and R rotate. S will scale the size of the handles to influence the curve. So a smaller red lines, a smaller scale means rotating has less influence over the curves. S to scale up means it has a larger influence over the curves. And G, E, G, whoops, E, R. So, but what do we do with the curve? So curves are obviously good for things that like have more of a natural look. So like hair or words, logos, you can use curves to make things like that. But how do we get it from just like this black line to anything? Over here in our object data properties, the little green thing, we have the geometry drop down here, and we can extrude like this. So this kind of makes it like a ribbon. Offset will kind of, change how much on either side of the curve it's extruding. So you can see, there's a couple different extremes there. I set this back to 0. Taper object, this, you can kind of change, tapering means it like gradually gets larger or smaller. So feel free to play with this. It's not necessarily very useful. It's a little complicated how it works. Underneath geometry, we have bevel. This is something further you might be more interested in. But if we change so there's 3 different types of bevel. There's a round, object, and profile. Round is just like the basic thing where it's going to take whatever shape the curve has and just kind of move it outwards. So right now it's this ribbon shape because we extruded with the geometry. And if I change the depth of the bevel, it's just going to kind of fatten it up a little bit. And I can go back and change the extrude down to 0, and then it just becomes like a regular circle. You can see that it's kind of a hollow opening here, so you can tick this box and say fill caps, and I'll just put a thing on there as well. That's the round bevel. Let me set the extrude back to 0. So we can also bevel with an object. So we can take a shape and kind of extrude it along this path. Now, this will only work with another curve. So what we can do is we can go back into object mode and Shift A, add another curve, and we pick a circle like this, and then we can under bevel. Oops, and I'm clicked on the wrong one. So make sure we're clicked on our curvy curve object. Under bevel object, we can select this Bezier circle, and it has extruded the circle along the path. And so now you can take this circle and edit it, move it, and it'll change the shape of the bevel on the curvy curve. So we could go Shift A, add another curve, another Bezier like this. So rather than like extrude and use this one, I'm actually just going to hit this draw tool over here and just like draw a letter N like this, N for Nolan. Cool. And then I can go back to W for my selection tool. W. And just delete these ones. Delete these vertices. And what I should do, so notice how the origin point is like way over here. I should go to Object, Set Origin, Geometry to Origin like this, just so the origin point's in the center there. All right, so then we can take, and I'll rename this one, this is like N curve. We can go down to my bevel on the curvy curve. I should name this one curvy curve. Curvy curve. Ooh, I can type. And under bevel, I can select the N curve. So now the letter N is extruded around there in a super funky way. And if you need to adjust, adjusting in object mode won't change it at all. Like if you want to change the orientation of this at all, luckily it's working fine. If you do want to change that, you'll have to go into edit mode and change it this way. Because if you're just in object mode, it doesn't make a lick of difference. So now the other thing too is once you have the curve in a place that you like it, so like maybe you want to like scale this down a little bit. Maybe just scale it down like this, make it a lot smaller. Oops, and I had that, for some reason I had this vertex selected as well. Oh no, maybe I had an extra one in there. There we go. You have to be a little smaller like that. So let's say you've got it in a place where it's good to go. Maybe you just want to leave it like this. Maybe it's all alone, or maybe you need to connect it with another mesh. Then you can object convert to mesh. And now it's just like a regular old mesh that you can manipulate, do what you please with. The other, so curves are cool. You can import scalable vector graphics, SVGs, and it'll bring them in as curves. So like if you have a logo, you can extrude and do things like that. So there's one other cool thing I can show you with curves, and that's how to make a chain. So you start by making just like a chain link. So let's add a torus into the scene here. And I want 18 segments because I wanted like this. Well, yeah, let's start with 18. And then tab for edit mode. I'm just going to select half of it here. Let me get a top view so I'm being precise. And I'm going to GX move it out. So just like a chain link like this. I'm going to A to select all. Caps lock is on. And I'm going to shift D and GX. Or, oh, hold on. Undo. Shift D. X. There we go. Like this. Or... And then I'm going to, with this other half selected, so I duplicated that while I was in edit mode. And then I'm going to RX 90 like this. And then GX. Okay, so we got 2 chain links. Turn off X-ray mode here. And actually I'm also just going to tab, I'm going to do A, and I'm going to scale this all the way down. And GX, move it back to the origin there. Okay. Add an array modifier. So we've done arrays before. We want to kind of line up the offset so that it is, just 0.9, 0.85. So it looks like it's lining up. Yeah, that looks pretty good. 0.85. And then, so how you've probably only used array up until now is fixed count for fit type. So it's like, how many do you want? Do you want 5 or do you want 16? But if you hit this drop down, we have fit curve. And so we need to signal a curve. So let's go back. Oh yeah, we are in object mode. Let's shift A, add another curve real quick. Let's add a Bezier. Let's tab for edit mode. I'm gonna just like kind of coil, extrude, R rotate, extrude, R rotate, extrude, R rotate. I'm kind of just like coiling up a little bit. Scale, small, R rotate, G. One more. And I'll just kind of move it up in the air a little bit. I kind of want to make this a lot smaller. My chain link a lot smaller. Whoops. Go back into object mode, tab. I want to make this a lot smaller. Okay. So back on our modifiers. Here we go. Here's the array. Let's use the eyedropper and we can select this curve. So it has made, and you know what? Let's just see. It's made the chain longer. It's made it the length of this curve, but we actually need to add one more modifier. We need to add the curve modifier, and this will kind of make it the shape of the curve. So curve axis or curve object, we just need to again select the curve. And so now it is starting to move along that curve. Now, because I scaled it down, actually that's the reason why it got smaller. So you can see that as I scale this up, it is now the length of it. So what I should do is I should change this. I want the scale to be 111 here. And then if I go tab for edit mode, I can S scale this down to make it a lot smaller like this. And GX. And now you can see that we have a chain wound around this thing. And then it's easy to just go back into your curve, edit this, and you can G kind of move this around, adjust where your chain is laying. And then if you make it bigger, if you make your curve bigger, it makes the chain longer, which is handy. And if you make the curve shorter, it makes the chain shorter too. So it's important that the scale is exactly 111. But anyway, that's curves. Cool. I think that's all I wanted to say about curves. Let's save this. Oh no, okay. There is one more thing. Save Blender file. Let's go back into object mode. Shift A. Let's add another Bezier curve. You kind of have to start with one of these, even if you're going to just create something totally new. So I'm going to go Tab, Edit Mode. I'm going to do the freehand spline again, and I'm just going to kind of make a path like this. And I'm going to G, move this over here, Tab into Edit Mode, because I actually want to W, delete this, vertice, delete this, vertice. The other thing you can do with curves is you can animate a camera along a curve. So let's Shift A, add a camera back into our scene here. And let's Shift A, just add like a light as well, a point light. And change the wattage to like 10 or 1,000 or something like that. Sure. So on our camera here, right above the object data, so you can see that the camera is, whoa, gosh. You can see that the camera is just at our origin point here. So above the object data properties is the little bone thing here, object constraint properties. And we want to add an object constraint. You maybe remember track 2, which we used with the camera before. The one we're going to look at today is hopefully pretty apparent, but it's follow path. So we add that. And then we just need to select the path. So use your eyedropper, and I want to select this curve. Maybe I'll name this one camera curve. Once again, my caps lock is on. And then, let's see, go back to camera. It's a matter of animating the offset here. So you can see that as I move this offset, the camera moves along the path. So I'm going to set this to 0. I'm on frame 1. I can add a keyframe here, move ahead to like, frame 100. Change this value to minus 100. Add a keyframe. Boom. Now the camera's moving along the path. And then you could also add a track 2. So we can say track 2 this curvy curve. So it's always going to be looking at it as the camera moves along. So then if we go into our camera mode here, this is what it's going to look like. That's how you can add some more interesting camera movements into your scene with using curves. And you don't have to do the freehand one. You can do the extrude and rotate and be a little bit more precise with it. Okay, a couple other final points with curves, just like editing them. So let's say you're in here and you've got like I'm editing our camera curve right now. Let's say I add another one over here that's disconnected, and you want to connect them for whatever reason. You can use your selection tool, and a lot there's up here when you're in edit mode, you have this control points drop down. This is where there's a lot of finer tuning tools that you can use. So to connect, we want to make segment. So it just kind of bridges those 2 points there. So then, the camera can continue along that path or whatever. The other thing you may want to do is set handle type. So by default, what Bezier is this like eased thing with the handles. That's what Bezier is. But if you want to control the handle type, like if you want vector, that's not a great one to do it on a control point. So keyboard shortcut is V. So we can go V for vector, and it'll make it like a point. So these move individually. So you can move this one. Whoops, and then you can move this one separately, and then they kind of come to a point. So you may want finer points on things, but then to go back, obviously you can go vector, automatic, or how do we get it back? Set handle type aligned. You may just have to undo. Anywho, Anyway, I think that's it. That's it for curves. We'll save this. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about just like, and this should be pretty quick, but I want to talk about using the 3D cursor and doing things precisely. So we talked about the 3D cursor a little bit last week when, or 2 weeks ago when we were animating characters, because I had bones. I was getting an error with Rigify because 2 of my bones weren't touching, or they were like disconnected, and I had to use the 3D cursor to move an object to the exact same position so that they were connected. So just to refresh, the 3D cursor is this red and white circle here in the very center. So by default, it's at 0, 0, 0. So if you have a cursor tool up here, and if you, so spacebar is actually, or no, shift, what is it? Shift spacebar? Shift spacebar, I guess, is the shortcut, which isn't really that handy. But it allows you to click to move your 3D cursor. And the 3D cursor is where new things are going to come into the scene. So when you're in a perspective view like this, it's always pointed straight at the camera. So if I move over here, and actually I need to go into object mode, and I go Shift A, add a cube like this, it's moved it over here, or it's added it over here. I can move the 3D cursor again, over here, Shift A, add a cube, and now it's adding it over here. Now it's, when it adds things, it's putting it on the, or it's putting the origin point on the 3D cursor. So that's just another thing to be conscious of, is where, if you're moving things, or if you're wanting to move things using the 3D cursor, you need to calculate where the origin point is going to end up. So, for example, let's say I want to have these 2 boxes exactly touching on just one side like this. So what I could do, is I can go W for selection tool, or I guess I can just click it like this. Grab this box, tab for edit mode. I can go 2 for edge select. Select just this edge here, and if you remember, the keyboard shortcut for 3D cursor is Shift S, sorry, Shift S, and I want to move cursor to selected. So it's put the cursor exactly in the center of this edge. Now if I go to object mode, tab, and I select this box, and I go Shift S again, and say move selection to the cursor, it makes these overlap because it moved the origin point to that edge. So they're overlapping. Let me Command Z, undo that. So now here's where kind of moving the origin point might be something that you need to do. So if we want this edge to be on this edge, we need the origin point of one of these to be on the edge. So we need to kind of, it's like a game of like, I can't think of a good analogy, but we need to like shuffle around. We need to use the 3D cursor in several different places to kind of move things where we need them to be. So first, I'm going to go tab for edit mode on this box. I'll select this edge. I'm going to Shift S, move the cursor to selected. And then I need to go hold on, I need to think about this. I think I need to go tab back into object mode, and we're going to move the origin to the 3D cursor. So let's see, I believe it's object set origin. Yes, origin to 3D cursor here. So we can see the little orange dot shifted from the dead center to where the 3D cursor is. Now what we can do is we can go back. So like we have this point marked. We can go back to this cube. I can go tab, shift S, cursor to selected, tab. And then over here, we can do this again. I can go, and now you can see that the origin point is right here on this edge. We moved the origin point. And what else did that do, by the way, before I move it? Origin point is where things rotate around. It's also where things scale from, the origin point. But now I can go Shift S, selection to cursor, ka-chow. And now these two edges are perfectly aligned in the exact same spot. So, you know, you may be watching this and saying, like, why would I ever need to do this? You may not ever need to do this. But sometimes you want to line things up perfectly, specifically with, like, the bone example. That's a time where you may need to use it. The other thing you could do is, like, well, you could just, like, extrude this out of there or duplicate it and things like that. Which actually brings me to my next point. I think I mentioned this before, but sometimes it makes sense to like join things together as well. So set object we can join. So join selected objects into active object. So that just made them the same thing now. Ooh, A for all. Anyway, let's talk about snapping a little bit. So here, another way to be precise is to use snapping. So next to your proportional editing button up here, there's the snap during transform. And if you highlight that blue, you can snap to different things. Things A can snap to many different things B. So you can snap whatever you have selected to an increment, so that's kind of like a marking on your grid on the world, to vertexes, edges, faces, volume, edge, center, edge, perpendicular. And you can apply this to move, rotate, and scale, or just one of them, or a combination of them. But if we do increment, you can see I have this double cube selected, but as I move it, it's moving it one square at a time on the grid. So there's kind of no in between. It's snapping to these grid increments. So this is where the scale of your world comes into play, and the units of measurement that you're using. So if we go into world properties, nope, not world properties, scene properties. So here it is, units. So right now we are using the metric system, and length is measured in meters. So the unit scale is 1 meter. So one box is 1 meter. So every time I do this, it's moving 1 meter. Ding, ding, ding. So like you could, sometimes people, if you're wanting to like do precise measurements or reenactments, you do have measure here. Measure distances and angles. Tweak left anywhere for new measurement. Drag ruler segment to measure an angle. X to remove an active ruler. Control while dragging to snap, and shift while dragging to measure surface thickness. So if you click this, I think they've actually kind of redone this a little bit. So if I drag between two objects here, you know, they are 5.649 meters apart. What did it say? This is a new tooltip. X to remove active ruler. Okay, that's cool. And as usual, it does it based on camera perspective, unless you're snapping to an object like this. So if I go from here to here, it's going to measure, you know, exactly 11, except I didn't click it exactly right. But it's going to be totally flat because I was using my top-down view. X to get rid of the measurements. So the other thing too, speaking of snapping, so we can snap to vertexes. So for example, if I'm in edit mode and I go 1 for vertex select, and I select this one, I can G, and it will, well, this maybe isn't a great example. Let me 3 for face select, E extrude this up and S scale this down and E extrude. So like if I go 1 for face select, vertex select, sorry, I can G and it will snap to other points. So you can kind of see it snap to this one. Or I can, whoops, you can snap to these other ones. It's not a perfect science. There we go. If you kind of move your mouse over it. There we go. And then if you have auto merge vertices turned on, it'll kind of remove the double vertice there. So that's snapping to vertex. Snapping to edge. Let me take this one now this time. I've got 2 selected. So it'll snap and slide along edges like this. Zip, 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 zip. So that's what snapping does. Snap along edge. And so on. That's snapping. But again, like if you're snapping along the grid with increment, it's doing it based on where the origin point is. So you may want to like tab select this corner here and go Shift S, cursor to selected, then tab for object mode to go object, set origin to 3D cursor. And so this also signals where the location of something is. So for now I set this to 0, 0, 0, it's going to be exactly on that center line right there. And if I've got snapping on, G like this, now I always know that it's going to be moving exactly 1 meter at a time. So yeah. Using your 3D cursor and using your origin point together can allow you to line things up precisely, have things snap into place. Oh, I don't think I finished my thought on scene units. So you can see that if I change the unit scale, it's making the distance of 1 meter larger and smaller. And obviously, like if you're doing something huge, maybe like if this is a building, if this is like a full scale building here, like a house, a house isn't 2 meters wide. Maybe you change this to, I don't know, kilometers. Now it's 2 kilometers wide, or maybe you use the imperial system. And so now let's see how this is feet. So it actually did the conversions. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 feet. We can change this to miles. So now it's 10 miles, etc. All right. So that's precision. That's all there is to say about that. And the final thing to talk about today is optimization. I'm gonna start a new file real quick. So what I'm kind of talking about here is like only using as many polygons that is necessary to achieve what you're going for. I'm gonna delete I'd start a new one. I'm gonna delete my light and camera here. And I want to turn on my overlays here. It's this little drop down next to the 2 circle things and statistics. So what I'm kind of looking at here are these 2 numbers, faces and triangles. So we have 1 cube in here, and a cube has 6 faces. So this pretty much adds up. I maybe explained this earlier in the semester, but why is it 12 triangles? It's because your graphics card computes things in triangles only. So it takes rectangles and anything larger than a triangle, and it cuts it into triangles. So it'll take a square and it'll cut it in half, and it'll calculate those different sides. So for example, like if I take this one and I GG slide it here like this, this is not a square. This is not a flat square now, this side. Because you can see it as I rotate the camera, you can see that now there's an edge here. So this is a triangle, and this is a triangle here. So that's why there's 12 triangles and 6 faces. So like, it's basically it's adding an edge along here, and it does that no matter what, even if it's totally flat. That's how computers calculate polygons with 3 sides. Anyway, sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. Now, what's a reasonable number of polygons to have in a project? It depends. I would say 6 is too few. I would say 1 million is too many. I'd probably even say 100,000 is too many. But let's see how quickly we can get up to 100,000 without crashing my computer. So let's add a subdivision surface modifier on here. Add a modifier, subdivision surface, or the keyboard shortcut is Control-3. So by adding 3 levels of subdivision surface, we have now 384 polygons. Great. That's fine. That's good. Shade smooth. Yeah, that looks perfectly round. Now let's add an array. Let's add an array like this. Have the count be like 20. All right, so 20 balls now. We're at 15,000 polygons. It's getting up there a little bit. And, maybe we add in, I don't know, a Suzanne. And we'll subdivide Suzanne. Let's actually give her a Control-5. Ooh, okay, 500,000. So we did 5 levels of subdivision for Suzanne. Now we're up to 500,000 and 1 million triangles. So we're already in like danger territory a little bit. What was it without Suzanne? 7,000. So let me turn off the cube. So Suzanne alone, with 5 levels of subdivision, is 500,000 faces over 1 million triangles. So there's a balancing act that you do. So this is without a shade smooth on it, by the way. So you could, like, if I go tab for it, well, you can maybe kind of see it. You can see that there's, you can kind of see the triangles on there. But if I go Control-3, oops, Control-3. No, I just have to turn this down. 4-3. And right click, do shades. Oh, okay. We got to do side by side. Okay. Shift-D, X. Shade flat, but then do 4-5. So this, hold on. Okay. Suzanne 1. So this polygon has 30,000 faces. No, this mesh has 30,000 faces. This mesh has 500,000 faces. But they look to me to be pretty identical. What if we even turn this one down to 2? How many does that have now? 7,000. 7,000 versus 500,000 looks pretty much the same. So if you're doing this, let's apply this. Look at all these. Look at all of these points here. This is too much detail because you can achieve the same thing with the shade smooth in 1/100th of the polygons. To save you some computing power. I had a student last year who did a poker chip, and it was like a very detailed poker chip. It looked really nice, and had like a couple thousand polygons, maybe even more. But then like had a poker table full of them, like stacks and stacks and stacks, and we were I think we were north of 10 million faces with just a bunch of poker chips. Where it's like, I'm happy you have that detail in there, but is it necessary? So that's one thing to be aware of with your projects, is you don't want to get this to be, you don't want this to be too crazy. And this is something that is and was a huge consideration in the gaming industry. That like, how can we maximize the visual effect on this computer or on this console with the limited hardware that's in there. So like, the games I feel like always have, they're like trying to squeeze out every ounce of detail in the graphics that they can. And early in the days of gaming, they had to rely on a lot of like tricks and things. So like image textures for stuff. They would reuse them and rewrap them, as many times as they could, to save on like a few bytes of memory. So I was thinking about, for some reason I've been on a kick of I'm watching people play the old Pokemon games. And so I was just kind of looking at it, but like the original Pokemon game, the file size was 500 kilobytes, like less than a megabyte. For like in my childhood, I like that it was the greatest game that was ever made, and like they like programmed it on such a small little thing. Anyway, that was kind of a random thought. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to talk about today. Finish up assignment 6. So we will do a progress check on assignment 6 next week. And we will also officially assign your final project. So assignment 6, remember, is just animating a character doing 3 different things, at least 3 different poses. So that should be pretty straightforward. Don't spend too much time on it. Obviously, finish up your other assignments if you haven't already. But start thinking about what you might want to do for a final. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll Zoom next week. Goodbye.